Good afternoon. It's good to see you again. We are trying to show to you today how a print is actually developed in terms of being actually printed on a machine. I'm using my ANET 8 to show you how this operates. First of all, we're going to be looking into how we need to do things. And today, we're not going to add filament. We're not going to do any showing of the SD card. I've already loaded a print into the machine. I've asked it to print. And at this point, it is doing its thing to start the process, which includes heating the bed to 60 degrees and the nozzle to 200 degrees. We are attempting to do that right now on its own. We could watch it if we were able to stand out there and look at the screen on the machine, and it would show us the increasing of the temperatures. Sometimes we have to be careful because if something were to go wrong, it could overheat at this particular point and ruin the nozzle. So you want to make sure you're just watching it as it gets started. What's going to happen is as you begin to see the machine move, that means that the bed has come up to the temperature of 60 degrees and that the nozzle has come up to the temperature of 200. When it does that, it starts to move. And as you can see, it is moving to the right and then to the left. And then it is going to go down to the bed and it will start the process. It's very important at the very beginning of a build, and I'm going to call it that after this. It's very important that you, at the beginning of the build, that you watch it very carefully because you want to make sure that the filament is sticking to the bed. One of the major problems that I had in my learning process was when I first got the machine and put it together, I used what they recommended at the time, which was a masking tape that I put on top of the metal bed that came with the machine. That worked pretty good, and I started tearing it up because I would get the nozzle too close to the machine. It wasn't sticking the way that it should. I had to change it so many times that it just didn't seem worth it. And I got online and realized that I could do something different than using the bed that came with the machine. I could add a glass bed to it, which I ordered specifically for my machine, brought it here, and then proceeded to try and figure out how to use it. There's several ways of using that particular glass bed. The two ways that are most generally used is to use either a stick glue on the surface of the glass or to spray it with a light coating of hairspray. I use the hairspray method. I've never used the glue stick method, and I found that that worked very effectively. So I started using the glass bed some time ago, close to the very beginning. Now that you're looking at this process, you can see that the machine is moving quite rapidly in a circular type motion. What's happening is it's laying down the initial initial layers on the bed, and it's outlining the part, and it's also going to start filling in between those lines, moving back and forth. As you can see now, it's moving back and forth, and what it's doing is it's filling in between the outside lines that it created. Now we've got a situation where we can't really see from this perspective the laying down of the filament, but as we go into this build, you'll begin to see the blue color on top of the bed, and what we're looking for is to make sure that that layer is sticking to the bed. You'll see it move, or you'll have the nozzle pick up a piece of excess filament and drag off the part off the bed, and you have to stop it at that time and restart all over again. As we go along here, you'll see that the process is beginning to show some signs of life, and that I can tell you at this point, and looking at it up closer, it was coming out just fine as far as sticking to the bed. The next thing that's going to happen is you're going to be seeing the development of this part, and this part is approximately 1¼ inches long, and it is 3/4 inches wide, and it is about 1/4 inch high. It has an L shape on the backside of this part, and it comes up, I'm going to call it, in 2 towers. They are connected at the bottom on the base, but they are separate all the way up to the top. And so consequently, you're going to see at the very end the machine just developing out those 2 towers once it has the bed completed. Now, what's happening here at this point is we're approximately, I'm going to say close to 3/4 or 1/3 of the way into the build. It's now building up on the base. You can see it's moving quite rapidly across the base and around the base, which means that the base still hasn't been completed. When the base is actually completed, you'll begin to see that the head, the nozzle, is just going to be on the back tower parts, as I call them, and it's just going to develop those parts going from one side to the other side. I'm going to let you take a look at this for a few minutes as we start to develop out this part. Give you a few seconds to watch how it's moving, and then we'll be back with you in a moment. We're back again, and you're going to start to see the blue haze that appears on top of a bed, which is actually the laying down of all the layers. And right now it's still building the base, which is building it up to about 1/4 inch thick. In a moment here, you'll see that the height is going to develop as you can see it now. The base is pretty much done, and what we're doing now, since you see very little movement in the head, does a little bit on the right, and it does a little bit on the left, and it's building up that tower, those 2 towers, and those 2 towers reach about 1 inch high. Unfortunately, when you have parts like that stick up in the air like that, sometimes in the very end of the build, a glob of filament may end up touching the top of the base, and a lot of times it'll knock it over. And that could be almost 3/4 or almost 90% into the build, and all of a sudden it knocks it over, and your printing process is done. So we want to make sure that we check on the print occasionally as we go through the day, as we go through the print time. The print time can vary. In this particular case, this part is fairly small. It's only going to take about a ½ hour worth of time. I have done as many as 17 hours in terms of one particular print, and sometimes you can get 10 or 11 hours into a print, have a defect that cause a major problem, and the print time at 11.5 or 12 hours, you've got a problem that you got to stop it, and you can't fix it. So you've spent all that time putting this thing together, and then it doesn't work. So it's important that you watch on a periodic basis to make sure that everything is fine. There's been times when I've come out in the middle of a build, and I've got a nest, literally a nest of filament that's laying on top of the bed. And the print had something went wrong with it. Exactly what, I'm not sure, but you're into a situation where you've got a mess on your hands, and you still aren't going to get the part because you got to start all over again. As we can see here, it's very, very small movements of the nozzle because it's just the very 2 towers that it's being developed. So we're getting close to the end of this build, and as we do, I'll let you know what we're looking for. When we finally get to the end of the build, you will see that the machine will move up all the way to the top of the build. So the nozzle is going to move up to the very top part of the machine, and then it'll move to the left. At that point, the bed will move all the way to the back. What it's trying to do is to get it out of the way because it's still warm, and because it's not moving, people have a tendency to want to touch things. And believe me, the nozzle at 200 degrees centigrade is hot and can burn, so you don't want to touch it until it actually cools off. It doesn't take that long for it to cool off, but it will take a bit of time. The bed, on the other hand, is warm, but it's not so hot that you can burn yourself. So you've got a situation there where in a very short time it'll be able to touch the bed. But you want it to cool off a little bit before you try and remove the part. When you are working with 3D prints, you'll find that at this particular stage of the game, a lot of times this is where the problems occur, where you might have a defect in the part. Fortunately, in most of those cases at this point, you can use some files or scissors or something to cut the edge with that may be causing the problem, and hopefully you can resolve it. I have a friend that has a machine that a little like a little gun that he can add a little bit of filament afterwards and fill in some voids. I don't know how successful that is. I've never tried it, but it's something that I think would be interesting to try and to own. As we get closer to the end of this build, you will find that the machine will start to move, and when it does, then we're going to be in a situation where very shortly thereafter we'll be able to remove the part. I'm going to let you have just a few more minutes, and I want you to look to see when that machine starts to move, because that will be the actual end of the print. Okay, coming back into the build, we still are printing, we're still developing, but oh, there you go. Now you can see that the machine is moving to the top, and the nozzle is moving up to get out of the way. It will be starting to cool down already as it gets to the top. You'll see it move way over into the left side, and then you'll see the print bed moving to the back side. Once the print bed has moved all the way back, then we'll be in a situation where we can move it forward and take the part off. We have to tell the machine that we want it to loosen everything up so that we can move it forward. There's a particular terminology that they use. You push a button, and then, as you can see here in a second, my hands will come in, grab a hold of the print bed, and I'll be able to slide it forward. That way I can have access to the board so I can remove the part. Here I am pulling the board forward, the bed forward. Then I will take a razor blade, put under an edge of the part that's on the board. It's stuck pretty good at this particular point, but as soon as I break a little edge away, the part will pop off and you'll have access to it. As you can see, there are some little strings attached to it that you break off or that you cut off. There may be some strings between the two towers, as I call them, that you may have to remove either with the cutters or with a file. But that should be something that's fairly easy to do. And quite honestly, most parts have a little bit of problems that require us to do a little bit of cleanup at the end. As you can see on this part, I'm cutting away some of the excess filament that has accumulated on one spot or another. But actually, when I got all done with it, the part looked extremely good. I have another GoPro part that I'm going to be connecting to this, so you'll see that even though this was printed separate and apart from the GoPro Pro part, it fits together very nicely, and you'll see here in a minute where that part goes together with the one I just made. I'd like to thank you today for having been here and watched this. I hope that you can give me a like and click on the like and also subscribe. I'm hoping to have more videos for you here in the future. Thanks once again for being here. Talk to you later. Bye.
That's building the park.